I'm the Secretary General of Axe Foundation, and we work with sustainability, and we work to create transformative solutions for a sustainable world. And we have, actually within food, we just started a test farm north of Stockholm, where we hopefully will grow and test the future of food.
Okay, wonderful. Matilda?
Yes, Matilda Genve Gustafsson, and Internet of Things Sustainability Director. So I work in the business area on how we can integrate doing business and doing good. And in the area of food and agriculture, we have a number of different projects all around the world, spanning from aquaponics to agriculture to urban farming, and we're working a lot, of course, from the information and communication technology perspective, together with mobile operators all around the world, since they provide the connectivity.
Okay, wonderful. So, Elizabeth, a question. We were discussing yesterday, having a drink with the speakers, and you said there are so many good companies in the US and entrepreneurs in sustainability that would love to come to Sweden because we have a nice climate to live here. Is that so? Can we just open the doors and then you will all come here?
I think if the doors are open, we will come, especially when we have a very hostile political climate in the US to flee.
Okay. Per, so how can we make sure that this window of opportunity stays open? Yeah, okay, well, a big hand for that.
Well, of course, I think that there are many advantages in Sweden and in the Nordic countries. We have a nice environment. We have worked a long time with our environmental goals, and we also have quite secure societies. And we are trying to motivate, for example, climate researchers from the United States relocating. So we have special grants provided to make sure that the research that is so important going on in the United States isn't really moved out of activity. We need this research. So if we can provide funding for that, and part of that will of course be in the food sector, we are willing to try to provide it.
Okay, lovely. But Anna, it's not only about stealing the best the US has, it's also bringing the best Sweden has to the US, right? What do you think? I mean, like, you're heading up the Swedish-American Chamber of Commerce. Is there a great opportunity for Swedish companies in the US?
A fantastic opportunity, and I think we're seeing it in an accelerated way recently for a lot of reasons. One, Sweden is at a very, very high, people look at Sweden as a very, very high quality. Companies that are being founded out of Sweden generally do very well. They have sustainability as part of their DNA. They also have gender equality, good working conditions and things like that, all of which we want American companies to take a look at and say, we can do that too. I think I mentioned before that I'm a recovered politician. And in my time in office, I learned very quickly, and I was raised here in Sweden, so both, but that if you could sell sustainability as profitable in the United States, you could actually get Republicans to vote for it. It hasn't gotten any easier, but it happens to be the truth. And so what we're now seeing too is that American dollars, institutional investors, VC companies and whatever, they're looking at the innovation sector here, and they're seeing that they're getting a lot more for their money here. So we get questions all the time at the Chamber saying, how do we connect to the innovation sector? And that's become, for us, really what we do almost more than anything else today. And it is an interesting change, I think. I mean, when I started in politics over 10 years ago, and they said to me, don't mention the Sweden thing, okay, because you'll never get elected in the States, you'll be considered a communist, and all kinds of terrible things, right? So, and then along came Bernie Sanders and kind of changed all of that. But it is a real opportunity today for that cross-border pollination.
Exactly. Caroline, I have to ask you, I mean, like, your Axe Foundation is, you say you're a lot about doing, not too much about talking. So what do you think? Is there a great opportunity for the companies and projects you see to scale them to the US? Or are we very local?
I think we're both. I mean, if you look at Sweden from a climate perspective, we're one of the countries that are maybe best positioned in the world. But if you look at our indirect impact from the climate, we are super badly situated where we are right now, because we have a 50% dependency on food from outside, and so we are extremely globally connected, but also dependent. So I think we are local in many ways, but I think also that we need to be more global. And one thing that I think is one area that I think could be very interesting, that I see that we don't really do anything about, that we've been looking into, is we have a problem with the climate. It's global. We have problem with biodiversity. It's global. We have a problem with soils, and that's global. But I think also that there are technologies, there are practices that we are not really looking into, that we should be really using and get through all these both continents, like regenerative agriculture, because if we use and use the soil in the right way, it has the potential to sequester carbon. I have a figure here: 3 to 8 gigatons of carbon dioxide per year in the next 2 to 3 decades could be sequestered in the soil if we use them in the right way. So we need to look at all these practices that are already there, and I'm also looking at you, Per, that this should really incentivize the farmer to use these technologies to start sequester the carbon in the soils that we have. Because right now, it's the problem. We need to make it a possibility.
So the farmers should be better paid in order to sequester?
Yes, and actually I read this morning, which made me very happy, that there are 2 startups in the US that are trying to create a marketplace using blockchain in exactly this field. So they're trying to incentivize so that the farmer will actually start harvesting carbon or start sequester carbon in their soils, because right now there's no real economic incentive for them to do that.
Okay, wonderful. This is really fun, right, Matilda? Because now we're talking about sustainability and technology,
Exactly,
and that's where you are, right?
Yeah, it's music to my ears this whole morning, actually. And we have been touching upon it throughout the morning, this with traceability and also co-working to gather data. We talked about data. So to be able to do that, we of course need all these devices and applications to communicate with each other, to understand each other, but also to trust each other so that they have identities that we can trust on as well. So interoperability is a key word. And then for interoperability, it's important that we work with standards that are globally acknowledged and also open standards so that many can access them. We talked about inclusive growth and inclusive sustainable agriculture. So here I think it's key really when talking about the tech sectors and what they can do. And also actually I want to say something about algorithms and machine learning, that you can also, ask algorithms or do algorithms that have a purpose. So you can also use them for these purposes to improve the soil, for example. So you can learn, but also the machine learning here. And that's, so it can be for good, so the technology for good, really. And interoperability then, talking about Sweden and US, for example, so if we work on the global standards using there is something called the IPSO Alliance, for example, where they work with smart object guidelines. So if these standards are used, then the interoperability is easy to do. So we listened to Intello Labs earlier, for example. So there we have them in our ecosystem. It was very easy to onboard. So that's a typical example of
But that's also talking about how Swedish technology companies like Ericsson can grow in the future, is to get in on food, right? Because it's a global, gigantic market.
Yeah, exactly. And we do that also, of course, together with the mobile operators, because here we have the connectivity and there we have the coverage, because the mobile phones is the most spread technology in the world. So that's also reaching out to all the people that we talked about earlier, the main population of farmers today in the world.
Okay, that's wonderful. So most parts of the data that will be transported in new 5G networks probably will be health or food data.
5G, 4G.
4G even?
4G or 5G, yeah.
Yeah.
4G is there now, 3G as well. It depends on, so if it's massive Internet of Things deployments, you don't have to wait for 5G, I just want to say that. If it's autonomous vehicles, or we talked about the fossil-free work vehicles earlier today, then of course we can have the autonomous working machines in the 5G network.
Okay, lovely. So food is going to be about data in the future. Now, of course, this means that we can transport solutions easier between countries, right? Now I have a question for Elisabeth and Per. Who can learn the most from who? Is the US from Sweden or vice versa?
Well, I think that it was an excellent speech, and of course very encouraging to see that there is so much work going on everywhere around the planet, and also encouraging to see that the United States isn't standing still. There's a lot happening on the local and regional level, which is of course also very, very positive from our point of view. So I think that we can learn a lot, and we know that Americans are doers, so when they see something that needs to be done, things start to happen. And I think that's something that we can learn from as well, having shorter time spans to implement activities, make sure that things start happening as rapidly.
Because it's policy, right? So once you see a good solution, it's support with policy, and we're pretty fast when it comes to policy.
Yeah, well, I think that we see a need, and we have a strong connection to the general public. People want change, and we, as a government, also shown that we are prepared to take the fight also with big industries. For example, the aviation industry wasn't very happy when we introduced an aviation tax, but we knew that it was necessary in order to reach our climate goals. And of course, if necessary, we will take the fight with other sectors as well. We hope that we can rather cooperate with the food sector, and we see clear signs that there are possibilities, but of course if activities aren't fast enough, we will have to implement economic incentives in the food sector as well.
Okay, lovely. And Anna, no, sorry, Elisabeth first.
I would just add, I think that, there's this great idea of Swedish designed, U.S. tested. We have a phrase that goes that if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. Talking about New York, of course, and I think that's important not only for Sweden insofar as there is tremendous innovation and human capital here, but the opportunity isn't just in New York, right? There are cities all over the U.S. With dramatically different needs when it comes to quality of life and the environment and food and sustainability. So, I think the really encouraging aspect here is New York will always be a hub for innovation, but there is a land beyond New York, and that's really where, this innovation is needed most.
Okay, lovely. So, Anna, how can we then make New York a hub and then spread innovation out into the Midwest and where it's needed most, I suppose?
But it's always really worked that way. I mean, if you look at the big Swedish companies that have gone ahead, I mean, all of the Volvo, Sandvik, ASEA, Skanska, you name it. I mean, they all kind of started in New York back in the day. We're talking decades ago now. None of them really are in New York anymore, with just a few exceptions. And it's the same thing with the whole tech sector. I mean, depending on what sector of tech you're in, New York is not necessarily where you want to end up in the States, but that's part of what we do. And that's also part of why we've now started this Gateway project, which is a 20,000 square foot space in Manhattan, where we will receive all of the Swedish tech startups that are ready to make the internationalizing trip. We call it the soft landing, but it's also the launching spot for them to go on. And so then we work with all the other chambers around the country and say, maybe you should be in Boston, maybe you should be in Chicago, maybe you should be wherever. And that's part of a network of all of us working together and encouraging the Swedish tech sector to come over, because it is the biggest market in the world still today, but have the safety net of us standing there. And we work with Business Sweden and the Council Generals and so forth. And then we help them go into the parts of the market where they're, where it's better for them to be, maybe. So it's the landing pad, but then the launching too.
Of course. And when you come to a new place, of course, you have to come there under one banner of your slogan or something like that. We'll start with you, Matilda. When we, stick the flag in the ground and say, we're in Sweden are going to be the global leader of, what do you say?
Sustainable agri-economics.
Sustainable agri-economics. Not tech-based sustainable agri-economics.
Well, I guess it's the same thing, sustainability and tech, because we're good at both. We're good at animal husbandry, we're good at low use of pesticides and so on. So if we take that with us and add the tech on, then we can really, I think, get the sustainable solutions.
The outsider's perspective here, Elizabeth?
What strikes me is that the solutions are very human-informed and sort of humanity-based. So what I mean is that I think in the US we're driven, the idea of tech drives us to think about highly engineered solutions, and that is certainly part of it. But I think what really anchors in the ability for innovation to scale and really resonate with people is that it should be based in something human. So we don't want just meat that, alternative meat that tastes like meat, but we want it to be made with integrity. And so I think the integrity of the inputs is really important, and I see that as being a bedrock value here.
Thank you. Per?
Well, we've already stated from the government that Sweden should be the first fossil-free welfare state in the world. And that, of course, sets a high pressure on us to deliver. And we've also said that we should be the first country to implement the Sustainable Development Goals. And we know that food, of course, affects a variety of these goals. So in order to reach that, we really have to start looking at how our food is produced and how we can find new and innovative solutions, providing us with healthier food and also food that meets the environmental issues that we are facing. So I think that Sweden will be a test bed for these. We are already in part a test bed for new ideas, but I think that will come much more in the future, so that it is Sweden we will look at when we find the new solutions that will then have a global market.
Good. Anna?
I'm going to quote you, if I may, when you said earlier, the economic logic. Because that is part of what we, through the Chamber of Commerce, talk about, that Sweden has shown that there is actually profitability in doing this. The ROI is almost across the board a positive one, and that you can both make money, but you can also save your municipal budgets and taxpayer money and all of these things, and that there is an economic logic to this. And unfortunately, this sits very deep in the American DNA, that if you cannot show profitability, we're not that interested. And so I think Sweden is actually a fantastic example of an entire industry and a way of life and government policy and whatever that shows that there's economic logic to it.
Okay, lovely. And Matilda, you will have the last word now.
I have a comment because I have an American app
Okay.
that is used. It's my daughter who has a sensor like you have. Because she has type 1 diabetes. So we can follow her the whole time, which means that, and that's from the tax money in Sweden, but they know in the hospitals that they will save money by her having this app. So the human aspects of being able to use technology for something good, and she can learn constantly on how her diabetes is. She's 11 years old and she takes care of it herself. So it's fantastic what technology can do and help us, and also improve the budgets actually for the hospitals.
Okay, lovely. Thank you all very much. I could have speak and talk to you for the entire day, but time is up.